Do-hyun wiped the grease from his hands and stared at the tangle of wires before him. The communication array on Station Harmony had been giving him trouble for 3 days straight. He was tired, hungry, and ready to call it a night. The station orbited a small moon between 3 different solar systems, and it served as a meeting place for dozens of alien species. Do-hyun had been working here for 6 months, fixing things that broke and keeping the technology running smoothly. He was good at his job. Machines made sense to him. They followed rules and logic. People, on the other hand, were complicated. Aliens were even more complicated. So Do-hyun mostly kept to himself, ate his meals alone, and focused on his work. It was easier that way. The door to his workshop slid open with a soft hiss. Do-hyun looked up and immediately froze. Standing in the doorway was Valera, one of the Lumineth diplomats who worked on the station. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, with skin that seemed to glow with a soft blue light. Her features were elegant and sharp, almost like she was carved from crystal. The Lumineth were beautiful in a way that made Do-hyun uncomfortable to look at directly, like staring at something too bright. "Engineer Do-hyun," Valera said, her voice musical and warm. "I hope I am not disturbing you." No, Do-hyun said quickly, standing up and nearly knocking over his toolbox. "I was just finishing up. Is there a problem with something? Do you need repairs?" Valera smiled and her luminescence brightened slightly. "Nothing is broken. I have come with an invitation for you." She stepped forward and held out her hand. Above her palm, a holographic image materialized. It showed an elegant design of stars and flowers intertwined, with text written in both Lumineth script and standard Galactic Common. Do-hyun leaned closer to read it. "A celebration?" he asked, confused. "Yes," Valera said. "It is the Festival of Rare Flowers. We celebrate the anniversary of my people's first peaceful contact with other species. It is a very special tradition, held every 10 cycles. This year it is being hosted here on Station Harmony." Do-hyun scratched the back of his neck. "That sounds nice, but I'm not really a party person. I'm sure you have plenty of diplomats and important people who would be better guests. But I want you to attend," Valera said, and there was something genuine in her tone that made Do-hyun pause. "You have been working on this station for many months now. I have watched you help others. Treat everyone with kindness regardless of their species. You repair the small light in the junior engineer's quarters even though it is not your responsibility. You always greet the cleaning staff. These things matter." Do-hyun felt his face grow warm. He had not realized anyone noticed those things. "I just try to be helpful." "Exactly," Valera said. "That is why I would be honored if you would attend as my personal guest. The celebration is in 3 days." Do-hyun wanted to refuse. Social events made him anxious, especially ones full of aliens he did not know. But Valera was looking at him with such hope and warmth that he could not bring himself to say no. She had taken the time to come to his workshop personally. That had to mean something. "Okay," he heard himself say. "I'll come." Valera's glow brightened considerably and Do-hyun had to shield his eyes slightly. "Wonderful. I am so pleased. The celebration begins at sunset cycle station time. The dress is formal but comfortable. Bring yourself and an open heart. That is all you need." After Valera left, Do-hyun sat down heavily on his work stool. What had he just agreed to? He pulled up the holographic invitation again and studied it more carefully. The design was beautiful, but he noticed there were small symbols along the border that he did not recognize. He tried to access the station's cultural database to learn more about Lumineth celebrations, but the information was frustratingly vague. The next morning, Do-hyun found his colleague Taejin in the station's small cafeteria. Taejin was another human, a botanist who studied alien plant life. He had been on the station for 2 years and seemed much more comfortable with aliens than Do-hyun was. "I need your help," Do-hyun said. Sitting down across from Taejin, Taejin looked up from his breakfast of something green and slimy that he claimed tasted like apples. "What's wrong? Did you break something important?" "I got invited to an alien celebration. A Lumineth festival." Taejin's eyebrows rose. "Really? That's unusual. The Lumineth usually keep their cultural events pretty exclusive. Which one is it?" "The Festival of Rare Flowers." Taejin paused with his spoon halfway to his mouth. "Huh. Never heard of that one. But Lumineth celebrations are usually pretty tame. Lots of standing around, polite conversation, maybe some ceremonial dancing. Boring but harmless. Why are you worried?" "I don't know what to expect. What do I wear? Do I bring a gift? What if I accidentally insult someone? Just be yourself, Taejin said with a shrug. Aliens appreciate when humans are genuine. And if you mess up, apologize and move on. We're still the new species in the galaxy. Everyone expects us to make mistakes. That did not make Do-hyun feel much better, but he thanked Taejin anyway. Over the next 2 days, he tried to research Lumineth customs whenever he had free time. The problem was that different sources said different things. Some said the Lumineth valued silence and contemplation. Others said they loved music and storytelling. One article mentioned that their celebrations focused on the feminine aspects of universal harmony, whatever that meant. Do-hyun decided to bring a gift, just to be safe. He spent hours in his quarters crafting a small sculpture from spare parts and metal scraps. It was a flower, or his best attempt at one with petals that could spin and catch light. He knew the Lumineth did not use physical objects the same way humans did, but it felt wrong to show up empty-handed. The day of the celebration arrived. Do-hyun put on his best formal clothes, a simple dark suit that he had brought from Earth. He looked at himself in the mirror and tried to calm his racing heart. It was just a party. He would make an appearance, thank Valera for the invitation, and leave after an hour. Simple. He picked up his metal flower gift and headed toward the event hall. As he walked through the station's corridors, he noticed more activity than usual. Aliens of various species were heading in the same direction, all dressed in what appeared to be formal attire. He saw a group of Avari, bird-like beings with brilliant feathers. 3 Thessians glided past, their aquatic features shimmering under the station lights. All of them were female. Do-hyun noticed this but did not think much of it. Maybe the males of those species were just less social. He reached the entrance to the event hall and stopped. The doors were decorated with those same symbols from the invitation, glowing softly. Music drifted from inside, beautiful and complex. He took a deep breath, checked that his gift was secure, and stepped forward. The doors opened automatically, and Do-hyun walked inside, ready to face whatever came next. The morning after accepting Valera's invitation, Do-hyun woke up with a knot of anxiety in his stomach. He had never been good at social situations, even with other humans. The idea of attending a formal celebration with dozens of aliens made his hands sweat, but he had given his word, and breaking a promise felt worse than enduring a few hours of discomfort. He started his workday as usual, but his mind kept drifting to the upcoming event. During his lunch break, he visited the station's central library, a quiet space filled with data terminals and holographic displays. He searched for information about the Festival of Rare Flowers, but the results were disappointing. Most sources described it in vague terms. A celebration of connection across the stars, an honoring of the feminine principles that guide the universe toward harmony, a gathering where rare and precious individuals meet under auspicious circumstances. The descriptions were poetic but unhelpful. Do-hyun had no idea what any of it actually meant. He tried searching for Lumineth gift-giving customs. One article said the Lumineth did not exchange physical objects because they communicated through light and energy. Another source claimed that thoughtful gifts were deeply appreciated as symbols of effort and care. A third warned against bringing gifts at all, as it could imply the host had not provided adequately. Do-hyun rubbed his temples. Why did alien cultures have to be so complicated? He decided to ask the station's AI assistant for help. The holographic interface materialized in front of him, taking the form of a neutral humanoid shape. Hello, Engineer Do-hyun. How may I assist you? I need information about the Festival of Rare Flowers. What should I expect? There was a brief pause, which was unusual for the AI. The Festival of Rare Flowers is a Lumineth cultural tradition. It is invitation only and considered a significant honor to attend. The event focuses on fostering meaningful connections between individuals of compatible energies. Compatible energies. What does that mean? The term refers to individuals whose life paths and personal qualities align in potentially harmonious ways. The festival creates opportunities for such individuals to meet and interact in a formal setting. Do-hyun frowned. So it's like a networking event? In a manner of speaking, yes. However, the connections formed are typically of a more personal nature than professional. That did not clarify much, but Do-hyun thanked the AI anyway. He spent the rest of his afternoon working on his gift. Despite the contradictory advice, he could not shake the feeling that showing up empty-handed would be rude. In his workshop, he carefully welded together pieces of scrap metal, forming them into the shape of a flower. He added a small motor so the petals could rotate, and he polished the metal until it gleamed. It was not perfect, but it was honest work. He hoped that would count for something. That evening, Do-hyun met Taejin again, this time in the station's small recreation area. Taejin was playing a holographic strategy game against a Krovan engineer, and losing badly. "I need more advice," Do-hyun said, pulling up a chair. The Krovan clicked her mandibles in what might have been laughter and gracefully excused herself from the game. Taejin turned to Do-hyun with a grin. "Still worried about the party? I don't know what to wear. I looked through my clothes and everything seems either too casual or too formal." "What do aliens even consider formal? Just wear what makes you comfortable," Taejin said. "Honestly, aliens find human fashion interesting no matter what you choose. We're still exotic to them. You could show up in maintenance coveralls and half of them would probably think it was a bold cultural statement. That's not helpful." Okay. Wear your dark suit, the one you brought from Earth. It's simple and clean. You'll be fine," Do-hyun nodded. "What about conversation?" "What do I talk about?" "Ask them questions about themselves. People love talking about themselves, and that's true across species. Ask about their work, their home worlds, their interests. And if you get stuck, talk about Earth. Aliens are always curious about human culture." "What if I say something offensive by accident?" Taejin leaned back in his chair. "Then you apologize and explain you're still learning. Look, the fact that you're worried about being offensive means you'll probably be fine. It's the people who don't care who cause problems." The advice helped, but only slightly. Do-hyun spent the next day in a state of nervous distraction. He nearly welded two pieces of equipment together that were supposed to stay separate. He forgot to eat lunch. He triple-checked the time and location of the celebration, terrified he would show up at the wrong place or on the wrong day. The evening before the festival, Do-hyun took a long shower and tried to calm his racing thoughts. He laid out his suit and checked it for stains or wrinkles. He placed the metal flower gift carefully in a small box. He set 3 different alarms to make sure he would not be late. Sleep did not come easily. He kept imagining all the ways the evening could go wrong. He would spill something on an important diplomat. He would accidentally insult someone's appearance. He would forget someone's name and cause a cultural incident that would get him fired and sent back to Earth in disgrace. When morning finally came, Do-hyun was exhausted but determined. He went through his workday in a fog, completing his tasks mechanically while his mind spun with anticipation and dread. His colleagues noticed his distraction but said nothing. As the afternoon wore on, Do-hyun began to notice something strange. Several times he passed groups of alien women in the corridors, all dressed in elaborate formal attire. They seemed excited, chattering among themselves in various languages. He saw a Thessian woman adjusting her flowing garments near a reflective surface. 2 Avari women were preening each other's feathers in an alcove. All of them appeared to be heading toward the same section of the station where the celebration would be held, Do-hyun told himself. It was probably just a coincidence. Maybe there were multiple events happening that evening. Or maybe the Festival of Rare Flowers attracted a particular demographic. He was too nervous about his own attendance to think about it too deeply. When his shift finally ended, Do-hyun rushed back to his quarters. He showered again, styled his hair as best he could, and put on his suit. He looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized the nervous man staring back at him. When had he become someone who got invited to exclusive alien celebrations? He picked up the box with his gift and took several deep breaths. He could do this. He would go to the celebration, be polite and respectful, thank Valira for inviting him, and leave after an appropriate amount of time. He had survived 6 months on an alien space station. He could survive one party. Do-hyun left his quarters and joined the flow of people moving through the station. As he got closer to the event hall, the crowds grew thicker. He noticed more and more aliens in formal dress, all heading in the same direction. The air felt charged with excitement and anticipation. He also noticed, with growing confusion, that he still had not seen a single male alien in the crowd. Where were all the males? Did Lumineth celebrations separate attendees by gender? Was there a separate event happening for males somewhere else? The questions nagged at him, but he pushed them aside. He was probably overthinking things. He always overthought things. The entrance to the event hall came into view. It was decorated beautifully. with bioluminescent vines woven around the doorframe and those mysterious symbols glowing softly in the air. Music flowed from inside, complex and melodic. Through the open doors, Do-hyun could see the glimmer of lights and the movement of many bodies. His heart pounded in his chest. This was it. No turning back now. He checked his gift box one more time, straightened his tie, and walked forward. The doors opened wider as he approached, almost like they were welcoming him specifically. Do-hyun stepped through the entrance and into the grand hall beyond, completely unprepared for what he was about to discover. The grand hall was absolutely beautiful. Bioluminescent decorations hung from the ceiling like living chandeliers, casting soft colored light across everything. The walls were decorated with projections of stars and nebulas that slowly shifted and flowed. Long tables lined the edges of the room, covered with foods and drinks from dozens of different worlds. Gentle music filled the air, played by instruments Do-hyun could not identify. And everywhere, absolutely everywhere, were alien women. Do-hyun stood frozen in the doorway, his gift box clutched in his hands as the realization crashed over him like a cold wave. There had to be at least 100 beings in the hall, maybe more. Every single one of them was female. Avari with brilliant feathers in every color imaginable. Thessians whose aquatic features shimmered under the lights. Krovan with elegant exoskeletons decorated with patterns. Lumineth glowing in different shades of blue and purple. Species he recognized and many he did not. Not a single male anywhere, and they were all looking at him. The conversations in the room had quieted when he entered. Hundreds of eyes in all shapes and colors had turned toward the doorway, toward him. The only male in the entire celebration, the only human in sight. Do-hyun's face went hot. His hand started shaking. This was wrong. This had to be wrong. He had made a terrible mistake. He was in the wrong place or the wrong time, or maybe he had completely misunderstood what kind of event this was supposed to be. Before he could turn and flee, Valira appeared at his side. Her luminescence was particularly bright and she was smiling warmly. Do-hyun, you came, I am so pleased. She gently took his arm, preventing his escape. Please come inside properly. Everyone is eager to meet you. Valira, Do-hyun said, his voice barely above a whisper. I think there's been a mistake. I shouldn't be here. There is no mistake, Valira assured him. You are exactly where you are meant to be. Come, let me explain. She guided him further into the room, past the staring eyes. Do-hyun felt like he might die of embarrassment. He wanted the floor to open up and swallow him. He wanted to wake up and discover this was all a nightmare. Instead, Valira led him to a quieter corner near a large window showing the stars outside. I should have been more clear in my invitation, Valira said gently. I did not mean to surprise you so dramatically, but I worried if I explained fully you might refuse to come. Explain what exactly? Do-hyun managed to ask. This is the Festival of Rare Flowers, Valira began. It is a very old tradition among many species in the galaxy. When different civilizations make contact, they often discover that compatible individuals from different species might wish to form bonds, friendships, partnerships, romantic connections. But the galaxy is vast, and finding such compatible individuals across species barriers is difficult. Do-hyun's heart was sinking with every word. So we created this tradition, Valira continued. Accomplished, interesting females from many species gather together. And we invite rare, eligible males from newly contacted species to join us. It creates opportunities for connection that might not otherwise exist. This is a matchmaking event, Do-hyun said flatly. In the most respectful sense, yes, though many who attend simply seek friendship or cultural exchange. The festival celebrates all forms of meaningful connection. Do-hyun looked around the room again. The other attendees had returned to their conversations, but he could still feel occasional glances in his direction. And I'm the only male here? You are the honored guest, Valira said. We celebrate you in your presence. Humans are still new to the galactic community. Your species has a reputation for being exceptionally open-minded and emotionally expressive. Many here are curious about your people and your culture. So you invited me here to be examined like some kind of exotic specimen? Valira's glow dimmed slightly, and Do-hyun immediately felt guilty for his harsh tone. No, she said quietly. I invited you because over these months I have seen your character. You are kind. You are thoughtful. You treat others with respect regardless of who they are or what they look like. These are qualities that matter greatly, Do-hyun. I thought you might enjoy meeting others who share these values. She paused, then added, but I understand if you wish to leave. You are under absolutely no obligation to stay. No one will force you to interact or form connections you do not want. If you choose to go, I will personally escort you out and ensure you face no judgment or difficulty. Do-hyun looked at Valera's sincere face. Then he looked around the hall again, trying to see past his panic and embarrassment. The women gathered here were clearly accomplished individuals. He could see the confidence in how they carried themselves. He noticed small groups engaged in animated conversations. Some were laughing. Others were examining the food tables with obvious delight. They were not here to hunt him down or force him into anything. They were here to socialize and potentially meet someone interesting. Just like any social gathering back on Earth, really. The only difference was the species involved and the gender ratio. And he was here. He had already walked in. If he left now, he would spend the rest of his time on the station wondering what might have happened if he had stayed. He would always remember this as the time he ran away from a challenge. If I stay, Do-hyun said slowly, what exactly am I supposed to do? Valera's glow brightened immediately. Whatever you feel comfortable with. Mingle, talk with people, try the food, listen to the music, share stories about Earth if you wish, or simply observe. There are no rules except to be yourself and show respect. And people won't think I'm interested in romantic things. Just because I'm here? Everyone here is an adult capable of clear communication, Valera said. If someone is interested in getting to know you better, they will say so directly. You are free to accept or decline as you wish. No one will be offended by honesty. Do-hyun took a deep breath. His heart was still racing, but the initial panic was fading into something more manageable. Intense nervousness maybe, but not total terror. Okay, he said. I'll stay. At least for a little while. Valera looked genuinely happy. Wonderful. Here, let me introduce you to a few individuals. She gestured to a small group nearby. But first, is that a gift you are holding? Do-hyun had almost forgotten about the box in his hands. Oh yes, I made something for you, as a thank you for the invitation. I wasn't sure if it was appropriate, but... He opened the box and showed her the metal flower. Valera stared at it for a long moment, and her luminescence flickered in a way Do-hyun had never seen before. You made this? She asked softly. With your own hands? Yes, it's just scrap metal, nothing fancy. The petals spin when you activate this switch. I thought maybe... Valera gently took the flower from the box and held it up to the light. The polished metal caught the bioluminescent glow and reflected it in rainbow patterns. She activated the switch and the petals began to rotate slowly. Do-hyun, she said, and her voice was thick with emotion. This is one of the most thoughtful gifts I have ever received. You took materials with no inherent value and transformed them into something beautiful and functional. You gave them purpose through your effort and creativity. This is very meaningful to my people. Several nearby aliens had noticed the exchange and were watching with interest. One Thessian woman whispered something to her companion, both of them looking at the spinning flower with obvious appreciation. I am honored, Valera said, carefully holding the gift. And I am even more certain now that you belong here. Come, let me begin the introductions. Do-hyun followed Valera deeper into the celebration, still nervous but no longer terrified. He had walked into something completely unexpected and overwhelming. But maybe, just maybe, it would not be as terrible as he feared. Maybe it might even be interesting. He just wished his hands would stop shaking. Valera guided Do-hyun through the crowd with practiced grace. She stopped near a group of 3 aliens engaged in conversation. 2 were Avari, their bird-like features elegant and striking. The third was a Thessian with skin that shimmered between blue and green. Allow me to introduce Engineer Do-hyun from Earth, Valera said warmly. Do-hyun, this is Liz and Kira of the Avari people and Micah of the Thessian Commonwealth. The 3 women turned their attention to him, and Do-hyun felt his nervousness spike again. But their expressions were friendly and curious, not predatory or overwhelming. A human, Liz, the smaller Avari, said with obvious delight. Her feathers were primarily silver with traces of pale blue. We were hoping to meet one of your kind. Your species is still so rare in this part of the galaxy. Hello. Do-hyun managed, his voice more steady than he expected. It's nice to meet you all. Is it true that humans have only been traveling in space for about 200 of your years? Kira asked. Her feathers were darker, deep purple and black. That seems impossibly recent. Yes, that's right, Do-hyun said. We're still very new to all of this. I'm still getting used to working on an alien space station. How fascinating, Micah said. Her voice had a flowing quality, almost musical. My people have been spacefaring for thousands of years, and yet we still find it strange and wonderful. I cannot imagine experiencing it all for the first time as a species. What brought you to Station Harmony? Liz asked, tilting her head in a distinctly bird-like manner. I'm an engineer. I fix things, mostly communication systems and maintenance equipment. Nothing glamorous, but someone has to keep everything working. Practical work is incredibly valuable, Micah said firmly. I am a warrior scholar in my culture. I study military history and strategy. People often think such work is all glory and drama, but mostly it is details and maintenance. Keeping knowledge preserved, keeping systems functional. Your work and mine are not so different. That perspective made Do-hyun relax slightly. I never thought about it that way. Do humans really form emotional bonds with other species easily? Kira asked. I have heard this said, but I wondered if it was rumor or truth. I think so, Do-hyun said uncertainly. Humans tend to empathize with almost anything. We form emotional connections with our pets, with our machines, sometimes even with plants. So yes, I suppose we can bond with anyone if we spend enough time together. Remarkable, Liz breathed. My people struggle with connection even among ourselves. We are solitary by nature. The idea of bonding across species seems almost magical. It's not magic, Do-hyun said. It's just paying attention, I guess. Noticing what matters to someone. Caring about their experiences. Micah regarded him with intense interest. Would you be willing to play a game with me? A traditional Thessian contest of strategy and adaptation. It would help me understand how human minds work. I'm not very good at games, Do-hyun warned. Neither am I, Micah said with what might have been a smile. But I enjoy them anyway. She led him to a nearby table where a holographic game board materialized. The rules were complex, involving moving pieces across a shifting landscape while adapting to changing conditions. Do-hyun fumbled through the first few moves, but he began to understand the patterns. The key was not to plan too far ahead, but to respond flexibly to whatever happened. 30 minutes later, to everyone's surprise, including his own, Do-hyun won. Micah stared at the board, then laughed. It was a warm, genuine sound. You are very good at adaptation, Do-hyun of Earth. Your people will do well in the galaxy, I think. As the evening continued, Do-hyun found himself passed from group to group. Everyone wanted to meet the human, ask questions, share stories. At first it was overwhelming, but gradually he settled into a rhythm. He learned that a Krovan scientist named Kessa was studying interspecies communication. He met an Avari poet named Liz who had written verses about Earth based on fragmented data from long-range observations. Would you like to hear one? Liz asked shyly. Sure, Do-hyun said, genuinely curious. Liz's voice changed, becoming more rhythmic and melodic. Blue world of endless waters wrapped in clouds of white and gray. Your children reached beyond their gravity, seeking siblings among the distant lights. They brought with them laughter, tears, and questions. They brought the gift of wonder never dimmed by age. In their eyes, the universe is still new. In their hearts, every stranger is a potential friend. Do-hyun felt his throat tighten with unexpected emotion. That's beautiful. Is that really how you see us? It is how the data suggested you might be, Liz said. But meeting you confirms it. You are still excited by everything. Still curious. Many species lose that quality as they mature into the galactic community. Someone offered Do-hyun food, and he tried several dishes that ranged from delicious to barely edible. He answered endless questions about Earth, about human culture, about why humans seem to enjoy such chaotic forms of entertainment. He was shown pictures and recordings from dozens of different worlds. He learned about art forms and philosophies he had never imagined. And slowly, something strange happened. He stopped feeling like a specimen being examined. He started feeling like a person at a party, meeting other people who were genuinely interested in conversation and connection. During a quieter moment, he found himself on one of the balconies overlooking space. The view was breathtaking. Stars stretched in every direction, and he could see the curve of the moon below. A few other attendees were out here enjoying the peace and quiet. One of them approached him. It was Kessa, the Krovan scientist. Her exoskeleton was dark green with intricate gold patterns. You are doing well, she said. Her voice had a clicking quality to it. Many males would have fled by now. I almost did, Do-hyun admitted. I'm still not entirely sure what I'm doing here. You are being yourself, Kessa said. That is all anyone can ask. Can I ask you something? Do-hyun said. Why are events like this necessary? Can't people just meet naturally? Kessa was quiet for a moment. My species struggles with emotional connection. We are very logical, very focused on data and facts. Emotions are difficult for us. When I heard about humans and your capacity for empathy across any divide, I wanted to understand how that was possible. I don't know if I can explain it, Do-hyun said. It's just natural for us, I guess. That is exactly why it fascinates me. What is natural for you is nearly impossible for my people, and yet standing here talking with you, I feel something. A connection. Understanding. It is small, but it is real. Do-hyun looked at Kessa and realized she was being incredibly vulnerable with him. This stern, logical scientist was admitting to difficulty with something most humans took for granted. Thank you for telling me that, he said quietly, and for what it's worth I feel it too. That connection. They stood in comfortable silence for a while watching the stars. Eventually, Valira appeared on the balcony, looking slightly concerned. Do-hyun, I am sorry to interrupt, but there is a situation developing. Administrator Marin has arrived and is demanding to speak with me about the festival. She opposes these gatherings. What kind of opposition? Do-hyun asked. She believes that events like this violate protocols about cultural interference with newly contacted species. She thinks we are manipulating you by bringing you here. Do-hyun felt a flash of anger. That's ridiculous. I chose to come. I chose to stay. Would you be willing to say that to her directly? Valira asked. Your voice as the human present would carry significant weight. Do-hyun took a deep breath. An hour ago, he would have refused. He would have hidden and let others handle the confrontation. But something had changed during the evening. He had met incredible people. He had formed genuine connections. And no one had the right to dismiss those connections as manipulation. Yes, he said firmly. I'll talk to her. Let's go. Valira led Do-hyun back into the main hall where a commotion had drawn a crowd. In the center stood a tall, stern-looking alien woman. She had gray skin with darker markings and wore official robes that marked her as someone important. Her expression was cold and disapproving as she addressed the gathered crowd. This event should not be happening, Administrator Morin was saying. The Lumineth know the protocols. Newly contacted species must be given time to adjust to galactic society before being exposed to cultural events of this nature. With respect, Administrator, Valira said calmly, stepping forward with Do-hyun beside her. All protocols have been followed. Engineer Do-hyun received a clear invitation and accepted of his own free will. No deception was involved. Morin's eyes fixed on Do-hyun with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. You are the human, yes? Do you understand what kind of gathering this is? I do now, Do-hyun said, keeping his voice steady. At first I was confused, but Valira explained everything. This is a social event where people from different species can meet and potentially form friendships or other connections. These events are designed to pressure males from developing species into forming inappropriate bonds, Morin said sharply. You are being manipulated whether you realize it or not. Do-hyun felt anger flare in his chest. No one has manipulated me. No one has pressured me. Everyone I've met tonight has been respectful and kind. I've had interesting conversations, learned about different cultures, and made some friends. That's all. You are naive to the ways of galactic politics, Morin said dismissively. Your species has barely left your homeworld. You lack the experience to navigate these situations. Something in her tone reminded Do-hyun of every condescending person who had ever underestimated him because he was quiet or awkward. He felt his nervousness transform into determination. You're wrong, he said louder than before. Several nearby conversations stopped. Yes, humans are new to space travel. Yes, we're still learning about the galaxy. But that doesn't make us children who need to be protected from making our own choices. You do not understand what you are saying, Morin began. I understand perfectly, Do-hyun interrupted. You think that because I'm from a new species I can't make informed decisions about who I talk to or what events I attend. You're treating me like I'm incapable of having my own thoughts and feelings. That's not protection, that's control. Morin's expression hardened. I am trying to preserve the integrity of first contact protocols. These gatherings exploit the natural curiosity that newly contacted species feel toward the wider galaxy. Exploit? Do-hyun looked around at the faces watching them. He saw Micah, the warrior scholar who had played games with him, Liz, who had shared her poetry, Kessa, who had been so honest about her species' struggles with connection. These people aren't exploiting anyone. They're just living their lives and trying to meet others who might understand them. The power dynamic is inherently unequal, Marin insisted. They have centuries of experience with galactic society. You have months, so what? Do-hyun said, his voice rising with passion. Every friendship has some inequality. Every relationship involves people with different experiences and knowledge. That doesn't make them wrong or manipulative. It makes them real. He stepped forward, addressing not just Marin, but everyone in the hall. I came here tonight terrified. I almost ran away when I realized what this event was. But I stayed, and I'm glad I did. I met people who are brilliant and accomplished and kind. I learned things I never would have learned otherwise. I made connections that mattered to me. These connections are artificial, Marin said, but her voice had lost some of its certainty. No, Do-hyun said firmly. Artificial would be if someone programmed us to like each other. Artificial would be if we were forced to interact. What happened here tonight was real people choosing to talk to each other. Real conversations about things that matter. Real moments of understanding across huge differences. He paused, gathering his thoughts. You want to know what makes humans different? What makes us special? It's not that we're smarter or stronger than other species. It's that we refuse to let differences stop us from connecting. We look at someone who seems completely alien to us, and instead of being afraid, we get curious. We want to understand. We want to find common ground. The hall was completely silent now. Even Morin seemed at a loss for words. Every species in this room has overcome enormous barriers to be here, Do-hyun continued. They've traveled across space. They've learned new languages. They've pushed past their own fears and doubts. And you want to tell them that they're doing something wrong? That they should go back to being isolated and alone? The protocols exist for good reasons, Marin said, but her voice was quieter now. Maybe the protocols need to change, Do-hyun said. Maybe instead of protecting new species from the galaxy, we should be helping them join it. Really join it, not just as observers but as participants, as equals. He looked at Valira, who was watching him with what might have been pride in her glowing features. Valira invited me here because she saw something in me. Not because I'm human, but because of who I am as a person. She respected me enough to give me a choice. That's not manipulation. That's friendship. Marin was silent for a long moment. The administrator looked around at the gathered faces, seeing the support for Do-hyun in their expressions. Finally, she sighed. Perhaps I have been too rigid in my interpretation of the protocols, she admitted. But I maintain that caution is necessary when dealing with newly contacted species. Caution is fine, Do-hyun said, his voice softer now. But don't confuse caution with control. Trust us to make our own choices. Trust us to learn from our mistakes. That's how we grow. Morin nodded slowly. I will file a report noting that no violations occurred here tonight. But I will also recommend that future events of this nature include more detailed information in their invitations. That seems fair, Valera said diplomatically. Thank you, Administrator. As Morin left the hall, the tension drained from the room. Conversations resumed, though many people were looking at Do-hyun with new respect. He felt suddenly exhausted, as if all his energy had been poured into that confrontation. Valera approached him with a warm smile. That was remarkably brave, Do-hyun. You spoke from your heart and everyone heard you. I just said what I felt, Do-hyun said, still processing what had happened. I couldn't let her dismiss everyone here like that. You defended not just yourself but all of us, Micah said, joining them. That is the mark of a true friend. Someone who stands up when it matters. Kessa appeared beside them. You said humans refuse to let differences stop you from connecting. That is your species' greatest gift to the galaxy. Not technology or strength, but that fundamental belief in connection. Liz fluttered over, her silver feathers catching the light. I must write new verses about this. About the human who defended friendship as a universal right. Do-hyun felt overwhelmed by their words and their presence. These people, these aliens who had been strangers just hours ago, now felt like genuine friends. He had defended them because they mattered to him. Somehow, in the span of a single evening, they had become important. Thank you, he said simply, all of you, for accepting me here tonight, for being patient with my questions. for seeing me as more than just a representative of my species. You are Do-hyun, Valera said warmly. That is all you needed to be. The celebration continued with renewed energy. The confrontation with Morin had somehow made the atmosphere lighter, more joyful. People approached Do-hyun throughout the rest of the evening, thanking him for his words, sharing their own stories of overcoming barriers to connection. As the night wore on, Do-hyun realized something profound. He had come to this celebration expecting to be uncomfortable and out of place. Instead, he had found belonging, not because everyone was the same, but because everyone here understood what it meant to reach across differences toward understanding. That, he realized, was what the Festival of Rare Flowers was really about. Not matchmaking or romantic connections, though those might happen. It was about celebrating the courage it took to remain open to connection in a vast and diverse galaxy. It was about honoring those who refused to let fear or difference stop them from trying to understand each other. And somehow, without planning to, Do-hyun had become one of those people. The celebration had been going smoothly for another hour when the doors to the hall opened again. This time the atmosphere changed immediately. Conversations faltered and died as everyone turned to see who had arrived. Administrator Morin stood in the doorway once more, but she was not alone. Behind her were 6 other officials, all wearing formal robes marking them as members of the Galactic Cultural Preservation Committee. Their expressions were stern and official. This was not a casual visit. Valera's luminescence dimmed with concern. She moved quickly toward the entrance, but Morin raised a hand to stop her. This gathering must end immediately, Morin announced, her voice carrying across the hall. I have consulted with my colleagues, and we have determined that this event violates multiple protocols regarding cultural interference with newly contacted species. You said earlier that no violations occurred. Valera protested. I said I would file a report, Morin corrected. Upon further consideration and consultation, I have determined that this event creates an inappropriate environment that could influence the natural development of human cultural integration into galactic society. Do-hyun felt his stomach drop. This was worse than before. Morin had not been satisfied with his arguments. She had brought reinforcements. The human in question has clearly been influenced by the atmosphere of this gathering, one of the other officials said. He was a tall being with blue skin and multiple arms. His defense of the event earlier demonstrates that he has been affected by prolonged exposure to persuasive social pressure. That's not what happened, Do-hyun said, but his voice was drowned out as Morin continued speaking. Furthermore, gatherings of this nature create precedents that could harm future first contact situations. If newly contacted species come to expect immediate social integration and romantic opportunities, it could distort their understanding of galactic society and their place within it. This is absurd, Micah said loudly. The Thessian warrior scholar stepped forward, her posture aggressive. You are inventing problems where none exist. Every species represented here tonight is a full member of the galactic community, with the right to gather and socialize as we choose. The issue is not with your gathering, another official said, a female being with crystalline features similar to the Lumineth. The issue is the inclusion of a human at this stage of Earth's integration. It is premature and potentially harmful. Do-hyun felt anger building in his chest again. They were talking about him like he was not even there. Like he was a child or an object rather than a person capable of making his own decisions. Excuse me, he said, stepping forward. I'm standing right here. You're talking about me like I'm not in the room. The officials turned their attention to him. Their expressions were not hostile. Exactly, but they were condescending, pitying, like adults looking at a child who did not understand the situation. We understand this must be confusing for you, the blue-skinned official said in a tone that made Do-hyun's jaw clench. But we are acting in your best interests and the best interests of your species. No, Do-hyun said firmly. You're not acting in my interests. You're acting in the interests of your protocols and procedures. You're more concerned with following rules than with treating me like a person. The rules exist to protect people like you, Morin said. Protect me from what? Do-hyun demanded. From meeting interesting people? From learning about different cultures? From making friends? What exactly am I being protected from? From making choices before you are ready, the crystalline official said. Your species has been part of the galactic community for less than one of your generations. You lack the context to understand the implications of events like this. So when will I be ready? Do-hyun asked. In 10 years? 20? 50? When will you decide that humans are mature enough to make our own choices about who we socialize with? The officials exchanged glances. None of them seemed to have a ready answer. The truth is, you'll never think we're ready. Do-hyun continued, his voice rising. Because you're not measuring readiness. You're measuring difference. We're too new, too strange, too unpredictable, so you want to keep us separate and controlled until we become more like you. That is not our intention, Marin said, but she sounded uncertain. Maybe not, Do-hyun said, but that's the result. You want to wrap us in protective protocols until we stop being ourselves and start being whatever you think a proper galactic species should be. He looked around at the gathered attendees. They were watching him with various expressions of support, hope, and concern. These people, these aliens from dozens of different worlds, had made him feel welcome. They had treated him as an equal, and now these officials wanted to take that away. You know what humans are good at? Do-hyun said, addressing everyone in the hall. We're good at adapting. We're good at learning. We're good at forming connections with anyone and anything. It's not a weakness. It's our greatest strength. We do not question your species' strengths, the blue-skinned official said. Yes, you do, Do-hyun countered, by trying to isolate us by claiming we need protection from social situations. You're saying we can't handle the reality of the galaxy. You're saying we're too fragile or too naive to interact with other species on equal terms. We are saying you need time, Marin insisted. Time for what? Do-hyun challenged. Time to forget how to be human? Time to learn to be suspicious and afraid of differences? Because that seems to be what you're teaching. Stay separate. Stay cautious. Don't trust. Don't connect. He paused, his heart pounding. That's not who we are. That's not who we want to be. And it's not what the galaxy needs. Valera stepped forward to stand beside Do-hyun. He is right. The protocols were created with good intentions, but they have become barriers rather than protections. Every species in this room has welcomed Do-hyun tonight. He has brought fresh perspective and genuine warmth to our gathering. That is not something to discourage. It is something to celebrate. I agree, Micah said, moving to Do-hyun's other side. The human has shown more wisdom in one evening than these protocols demonstrate in centuries of application. One by one, other attendees began to move forward, creating a wall of support around Do-hyun. Kessa, Liz, Kira, and dozens of others. They stood together, unified in their defense of the choice to connect across species barriers. The officials looked increasingly uncomfortable. This was clearly not the response they had expected. You speak of protecting humanity, Kessa said, her clicking voice clear and strong. But you insult them by assuming they cannot make their own choices. You insult all of us by suggesting our friendship and respect is somehow harmful. The Krovan scientist is correct, Liz added, her melodic voice carrying across the hall. We are not predators seeking to exploit the naive. We are individuals seeking understanding and connection. To suggest otherwise is deeply offensive. Do-hyun felt overwhelmed by the support. These people, most of whom he had met only hours ago, were risking their own standing to defend him in the event. It was humbling and empowering at the same time. Look around you, Do-hyun said to the officials. Look at what you're trying to shut down. This isn't manipulation or exploitation. This is what the galaxy should be. Different people from different worlds choosing to come together in peace and friendship. Isn't that supposed to be the goal of your entire organization? The officials were silent. They looked at each other, clearly uncertain how to proceed. Perhaps, the crystalline official finally said slowly, we have been too focused on theoretical harm and not enough on observed reality. The human does appear to be in full possession of his faculties and free will. More than that, Morin added, and her voice had softened. He has demonstrated understanding and insight that suggest humans may indeed be ready for fuller integration. His arguments have given me much to consider. She looked directly at Do-hyun. I apologize for underestimating you and your species. You have shown courage and clarity tonight. Perhaps the protocols need to be reevaluated in light of what we have witnessed here. Perhaps they do. The blue-skinned official agreed. We will withdraw our objection to this gathering and report back to the committee that Earth humans may be ready for accelerated cultural integration. The officials filed out of the hall, leaving a stunned silence behind them. Then slowly the room erupted in cheers and celebration. People surrounded Do-hyun, thanking him, congratulating him, expressing their admiration and friendship. Valira placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, her glow warm and bright. You have changed something important tonight, Do-hyun. Not just for this event, but for the entire galaxy's approach to newly contacted species. That is no small thing. Do-hyun felt tears prickling at the corners of his eyes. He had come to this celebration expecting awkwardness and discomfort. Instead, he had found purpose and belonging. He had discovered that his voice mattered, that his choices had weight, and that connection across impossible differences was not just possible, but essential. The celebration continued long into the station's night cycle, but the atmosphere had changed. What had started as a social gathering had transformed into something more meaningful. People were not just mingling anymore. They were having deep conversations about change, about the future, about what it meant to build a truly connected galactic community. Do-hyun found himself sitting in a quiet corner with a small group that included Valira, Micah, Kessa, and Liz. They were discussing what would happen next, what the evening's events might mean for the future. The committee will have to reconsider many of their protocols, Valira said thoughtfully. Your arguments exposed fundamental flaws in their approach. They cannot ignore that. I hope so, Do-hyun said. But I also hope they understand I was not trying to destroy their rules. I just wanted them to see me as a person, not as a problem to be managed. That distinction is important, Kessa agreed. Rules serve a purpose. But when rules become more important than the people they are meant to serve, they have failed their function. Will you write about tonight? Do-hyun asked Liz. In your poetry? The Avari silver feathers ruffled with what might have been pleased embarrassment. I am already composing verses in my mind. Tonight will be remembered, I think, as the night when a human reminded the galaxy what connection truly means. I am more interested in what happens tomorrow, Micah said practically. Do-hyun, you have opened a door, but will you walk through it? Will you continue to bridge the gap between humanity and the rest of the galaxy? Do-hyun considered the question seriously. 6 hours ago, he would have said no. He would have preferred to return to his quiet workshop and his solitary routine, but something had changed in him tonight. He had discovered that he was capable of more than he thought, that his voice mattered, that his choices could affect change. I think I have to, he said slowly, not because anyone is forcing me, but because it matters. If tonight taught me anything, it's that connection is worth fighting for. That understanding across differences is worth the effort and discomfort. Then let me make a proposal, Kessa said, her mandibles clicking thoughtfully. I am developing a research project on interspecies communication. I would be honored if you would collaborate with me. Your insights as a human would be invaluable. I would like that, Do-hyun said, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. I don't know how much help I'll be, but I'm willing to try. That is all anyone can ask, Kessa replied. As the celebration began to wind down, attendees started saying their goodbyes. Many approached Do-hyun personally to thank him or exchange contact information. He collected dozens of communication codes, promises to meet again, invitations to visit different worlds and cultures. Liz gave him a small data chip containing all her poetry about Earth and humans. So you can understand how we saw your people before we met you, she explained. And perhaps you can help me write better verses now that I know you. Micah clasped his hand in the Thessian manner, a gesture of respect between equals. You have the heart of a warrior, Do-hyun, not because you fight, but because you stand firm for what matters. That is the truest courage. Kessa simply nodded to him, but her eyes held warmth that her logical nature found difficult to express in words. I will send you details about the research project soon. I look forward to working together. Finally, only Valira remained. The grand hall was empty except for the two of them and the automated cleaning systems that had begun their work. I must thank you, Valira said softly. Her luminescence dimmed to a gentle glow. When I invited you, I hoped you would enjoy yourself. I did not expect you would change the course of galactic policy. I just said what I felt, Do-hyun replied. I couldn't let them dismiss everyone here. Dismiss the connections we made. Those connections are real, Valira assured him. What you built tonight will last. Friendships formed across species barriers are often the strongest, because they require such intention and effort. Can I ask you something? Do-hyun said. Why did you really invite me? The real reason. Valira was quiet for a moment, considering her answer. Because I have been observing galactic society for many cycles, and I have seen it become cautious and rigid. Species stay within their own groups. They follow protocols and maintain careful distances. It is safe, but it is also lonely. She gestured around the empty hall. When your species emerged into the galaxy, I saw something I had not seen in a long time. Enthusiasm, curiosity, a willingness to embrace the strange and unknown. I wanted to preserve that quality, to show it to others who had forgotten what it felt like. You used me as an example, Do-hyun said, but there was no accusation in his tone. I gave you an opportunity, Valira corrected gently. What you did with that opportunity was entirely your choice, and you chose to be exactly what I hoped your species would be. Open, brave, and kind. Do-hyun felt his face grow warm. I was terrified most of the night. Bravery is not the absence of fear, Valira said. It is acting despite fear. You were terrified and you stayed anyway. You spoke up when it mattered. That is the definition of courage. They walked together toward the exit. The station's corridors were quiet in the late cycle, most residents asleep or in their quarters. What will you do now? Valira asked. Continue my work, I suppose, Do-hyun said, but maybe with a different perspective. I'll collaborate with Kessa on her research, maybe attend more cultural events, try to be a bridge between humanity and the galaxy, in whatever small ways I can. Small ways often have large impacts, Valira said wisely. The smallest bridge can allow the greatest understanding to cross. They reached Do-hyun's quarters. He paused at the door, suddenly reluctant for the evening to end. Thank you, he said, for inviting me, for believing I could handle this, for seeing something in me that I did not see in myself. Thank you, Valira replied, for proving that my belief was justified, for reminding me why I love this work, for showing me that hope for a truly connected galaxy is not foolish. She began to glow brighter, a luminous gesture of deep respect and affection. Sleep well, Do-hyun of Earth. Tomorrow begins a new chapter for you and for many others. 6 months passed. Do-hyun stood in his workshop, but it looked different now. The walls were covered with star charts, cultural notes, and photographs from a dozen different worlds. His workbench held not just repair equipment, but also gifts from friends across the galaxy. A crystalline sculpture from Valira, a feather from Liss, a complex puzzle game from Micah. His communication terminal chimed constantly with messages. Kessa sending research data, Liss sharing new poetry, invitations to cultural events and celebrations, questions from other humans who had heard about his experience and wanted advice about integrating into galactic society. He had become, somewhat accidentally, an informal ambassador for human-alien relations. The Festival of Rare Flowers had inspired similar events across the galaxy, and humans were increasingly welcome at gatherings that had previously been exclusive. The Galactic Cultural Preservation Committee had indeed revised many of their protocols, emphasizing individual choice and agency over protective isolation. Taejin appeared in the doorway, grinning widely. Ready for tonight? As ready as I'll ever be, Do-hyun said, straightening his formal jacket. Still can't believe you're voluntarily attending another one of these events, Taejin teased. 6 months ago, you could barely handle a casual dinner party. 6 months ago, I was a different person, Do-hyun said simply. They walked together toward the event hall, where another cultural celebration was being held. This one was hosted by the Krovan, and it would focus on scientific achievement across species. Kessa had specifically invited Do-hyun to present their collaborative research on communication patterns. As they approached the hall, Do-hyun saw familiar faces. Valira was already there, her glow warm and welcoming. Micah stood talking with a group of Thessian warriors. Liss was near the entrance, her feathers gleaming. Do-hyun! Kessa called out, waving a claw in greeting. Come, we must prepare our presentation. Do-hyun smiled and headed toward her, but paused to look back at the scene. The hall was filled with beings from dozens of species, all gathering together in peace and curiosity. Humans were scattered throughout the crowd, no longer oddities but accepted members of the galactic community. He thought about that first night, when he had stood frozen in the doorway of a different hall, terrified and overwhelmed. He had been invited to a celebration by an alien woman, and all the guests had been alien women, and he had nearly fled in panic. But he had stayed. He had been brave, and in being brave he had discovered something important. The galaxy was vast and strange and often frightening, but it was also full of people. Different in biology but similar in their desire for connection, understanding, and belonging. The barriers between species were real, but they were not insurmountable. With courage, empathy, and genuine effort, anyone could bridge those gaps. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy, not superior technology or physical strength. Not even their adaptability, though, that helped. It was their fundamental, stubborn, beautiful refusal to accept isolation as inevitable. Their belief that connection was always possible, always worth pursuing, no matter how different the other person might seem. "Are you coming?" Kessa called again,